Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where today is the day that we send my Zenvo to America. The TSR-S is about to fly over to California for Monterey Car Week. Now I've alluded a little bit to this in the build-up, but it's following in the heels of the Ford GT, which went over back in 2019, the GT Black Series that's been in the US in 2022 and 23, the GT 500, which I bought out in the US, but this is going for a few key reasons. Monterey Car Week is out of this world, the best hypercar place you can be imaginable. But also, Zenvo have something new coming, Aurora. You might have seen a little bit about it. A quad-turbo V12 in an all-new hypercar. And we're heading to the launch, the unveiling, with my TSR-S. So today, let me run you over the preparations, then we're taking the car over to drop it off at Heathrow. We're actually flying later somewhere else for something else before going to America in a week or so. It's not going to be long before driving that in the sunshine of Los Angeles. Before we run through all of the plans ahead with my Zenvo in America, and remember last year I actually drove the blue factory TSR-S at Laguna Seca, but now it's time to send my car over, and today is the drop-off day, which means driving this in less than perfect weather over to a cargo warehouse near Heathrow Airport. That's where it's going to be loaded onto a pallet and strapped down. That gets taken into the belly of a cargo plane, which will literally fly it across the Atlantic to be driven in sunny California, to take this to Monterey Car Week, to take it to the introduction of Aurora. And believe me, you don't quite yet know what you're in for with the new Zenvo. This is seriously exciting, but it's also to drive this car. And obviously there are going to be a lot of plans to take it to visit loads of different people, to go to lots of different events, to see many places. And I'll run you through some of those in a moment. But this is not the first Shmeemobile to go to another continent. Of course, about 4 years ago, in July 2019, my Ford GT went out for an American tour, and that was the craziest experience ever. Technically, it had already flown, because once these are built by Multimatic in Markham, just outside of Toronto in Canada, they're then taken into the US to Detroit, they then go to Chicago and get flown across the world. So this flew into Europe before I took delivery. Now, I flew it back from Amsterdam Schiphol Airport out to New York, to JFK, and literally drove it, obviously in the red and gold back then, it's got the temporary wrap now, literally drove it into Times Square before a tour that took me all the way down the East Coast to Miami, across to Car Week, to Los Angeles, up to San Francisco, Las Vegas, before finishing in Chicago and flying it home. But the memories of that trip, the videos of this car were just something I will never, ever, ever forget. Obviously, I had to transport a lot between the different cities because it's not exactly the most practical car, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But next up, in early 2021, I bought my Shelby GT 500 out in the US. This was living in Florida, in Miami, for about a year and a half in total. Did 13,000 miles, multiple tours across the country, super practical, so it worked perfectly for the Gumball 3000, Toronto to Miami. I had previously done my Where's Shmee USA tour all the way from Miami to California. It was about 7,000 miles by the time we had done all of the wiggles, taking 6 or 7 weeks to complete it, before then shipping it over on a boat and bringing it back to the UK, but also to other continents. The AMG GT Black Series, this went out, it was flown to the Middle East, had it in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, sailed it on a boat back. It was here very briefly, then popped it on a boat over to the US, to Florida, although we started the tour up in the Northeast, drove it in total in the United States, and this is what's craziest to me. I drove that car 14,000 miles around America, 29 states, plus DC as well, over about 100 days or so with it in the country. The most fantastic of memories. It's unreal to think about what it's like driving your own car so far away from home. And of course, you can't rent a car like this to drive 14,000 miles. You'd probably end up paying more than the actual car. So sending it on a boat has been the coolest way of doing it. But this time around, given the time, because Car Week is not exactly a long time from now, in fact, Aurora is going to be launching on the 18th of August, given the time and given the value and given the speed with which we'd like to get it over, this thing's going in a plane. Now, to send a car in a plane, there are some things you need to prepare. Obviously, all of the customs docs, all of the car's registration docs, those all need to be with the agents to make sure it can go. It needs to be very low on fuel, and in fact, it's actually too low on fuel. I don't think I've got enough fuel to even be able to drive it to the airport at the moment, so we might need to do a little fill up of that. And you need to just make sure it's all prepared, ready, good to go and going to be fine out the other end. Because obviously when I land, I want to go and just pick it up and go and drive it. And go and drive the Malibu canyons, to go and drive through Hollywood, to go and drive it down Rodeo Drive. This makes no sense. We're here, that's like 6,000 miles away, and I'm talking about driving this car over there. Well, somehow we're going to make it happen. But you know what I'm really excited about? Is when everyone gets to see Aurora. Over the last year or two, I have been asked countless times why I bought a Zenvo. I know it wasn't the obvious choice. It was a complete curveball from what anybody might expect. But there's one reason that I've been super consistent with throughout, and that is my belief in the future of this company. My belief in where Zenvo are going, and you are about to see this. Aurora is going to blow your mind. In fact, Zenvo have already shown the new engine, developed in partnership with Mahler, very established in this industry, a brand new 12-cylinder power plant. In fact, a 6.6-litre quad turbo V12 combustion engine alone producing 1,250 horsepower and revving to 9,800 RPM. Combine that with a hybridization system, electric motors, for a total of 1,850 horsepower. Imagine what this thing is going to be like. A nearly 10,000 RPM V12. This is... My brain can't even begin to really fully comprehend this, other than that I know it is going to absolutely make us all drop our jaws. If you are a petrol head, you are going to be blown away by Aurora. So for me, being able to take out my previous generation Zenvo, the TSR-S, to be part of everything at Monterey Car Week and to enjoy the memories of this car, which was the plan from the very beginning. In fact, I think back in the early days, before it was even built, we talked about taking it to the Goodwood Festival of Speed, talked about taking it out to Monterey Car Week. It's now time to make this happen, and to make it happen in the most exciting of ways. I am so proud for everybody at this company and what I know that they've achieved and what's about to happen, because you are going to be so impressed by Aurora when you see it. When it comes to getting the car ready, having done this a few times, I have a bit of experience now with what you need to do. And actually, in the case of this car, because it's not as obvious, let's say, as a Mercedes in terms of how you operate it, we've actually produced some little instructions so that if anybody needs it along the way, they actually know what to do. In addition to that, obviously all of the documents, I've prepared it in the front. Basically, you can't really send anything with the car that isn't required for the car. So in the front of this, if we just pull it open, which is always really quite exciting the way it does that, this is where you have your luggage space. We've got the CTEC Smart Charger, just a couple of things for the car itself. But obviously there's not a huge amount of space. And while I can drive it, you know, with my day bag, let's say, and take it to different places, I can't exactly tour across the entire country with it. I'm not going to use it, especially considering the value, considering the rarity, considering how special it is, considering how, if anything happens, it would have to go back to Denmark. It's not a daily thing to use in the United States. We will have another car during various different parts of the tour, which might become, before too long, the dark horse, which is of course the plan. But certainly this will be going to the main events, going to the main places, starting obviously with Los Angeles. A week or so before Car Week, starting in LA, to take it to different people, to go and do different things with it, to drive it around some familiar spots, Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Malibu, up and down. It doesn't make any sense, but it's where we're going to go from there that's also going to be really crazy, and I still need to kind of work out over the coming months. For now though, I think we're not far from being ready to get it unplugged from the charger, to get it started, to head on out to make the journey over to London Heathrow. If you're a regular viewer, this is about to be super cliche. Sitting on the M25 in the gloomiest possible weather that Britain can throw at us in summer, and now in a traffic jam. The variable speed limit is now down to 40 miles per hour, although we can't even go that, as we make our way around towards Heathrow Airport. Now, the upshot is that the next time I drive this car, in theory, we'll be picking it up from the warehouse outside of LAX, the airport at Los Angeles, to drive it in the sunshine. And I can't quite believe that is what's coming up with this car. It was kind of always the plan, but actually making it happen in reality is a totally different thing. Like, to know it's actually going to be there. Then, of course, is what comes next. And the first couple of weeks are going to be California-based. So starting in LA, around Orange County, meeting up with loads of people, lots of friends out there, lots of cool things in the works. Then joining FuelRun, as I have done in previous years, to drive up PCH, up the Pacific Coast Highway, up towards Monterey for all of the antics of that week. And that's, of course, going to be Quail, the introduction of different cars like Aurora. Then going from Quail, we next have Exotics on Broadway, which is again an amazing event. Last year I actually drove the blue TSR-S to Exotics on Broadway. This year taking my car. Then after that we have Pebble Beach, we have some other things as well in the area before it's time to head back towards Los Angeles for a little bit more before going onwards. Now it's going to be broken into a few different parts. Later in the year we're going to travel a little bit more around the country. I'm still formulating the plans and exactly where I'm going to take the car. You can be sure it will be at SEMA in Las Vegas, and of course there's the whole Mustang Dark Horse timing that somehow is going to fit around this. The car is really, really nearly ready, but I don't think it's going to be in time for this trip. So it's all Zenvo TSR-S for now, but hopefully later in the year. How cool will it be for the Dark Horse to kind of be the support car for this, for some things? Like, then we can take our luggage, we can take our stuff with us while still being able to drive this if I can arrange everything and set it all up. So that's a little bit in the plans. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't see driving this coast to coast. I'm not afraid of miles. We're at 1,800 miles already. It's not even a year old. By the time it's a year old, it should be on about 3,000, I would guess, something like that, because it's a car. It's built to be driven. Even if it's proper hypercar territory, there's no reason not to go and take it out. Actually, it's just started drying up. It was really foul a little bit earlier. So this is very, very, very welcome right now. Just the 40 miles per hour bit isn't. This is not what a Zenvo is supposed to do. And I need to burn off some more fuel because I actually have more than I thought I did. So maybe I need to do some second and third gear shifts. This reminds me of dropping off the GT Black Series in America, where I just had to constantly bang, 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 bang as much as possible with the exhaust. Now, there are speed cameras here, so there are a lot of people who are far braver than I am, given the limit is 40. And people don't seem to care. Maybe they know something that I don't know, but it's definitely a bit of a chill until we can get a little bit nearer. We're in IQ power mode. If you put it in max, you get the full 1177, and IQ is limited to 800, obviously in road mode. And it's fascinating to just get more used to driving this. You can drive this car so much more comfortably than you think. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's firm and it's very raw, and when you accelerate and drive in a sporty manner, you get out with a real adrenaline buzz. Really, really, really kind of on edge almost about the drive. We also at the moment have the Skoda, the team car, the Skoda Octavia VRS, because once we've dropped this, we're going over to the passenger terminals to fly out. So hopefully the timings of all of this are going to work out, and that I haven't completely stumped myself here with the lanes. I think we're going to be good, but not the most efficient of progress today. I'm not going to pretend I'm happy about sitting in a traffic jam, but if I'm going to sit in a traffic jam, I'd rather be doing it in something that's kind of cool than really, really fed up. Is that a fake 355? That is a fake Ferrari 355. That is hilarious. It's kind of almost a bit Testarossa, but it was 355 Spider-esque. Well, that woke up my journey a little bit. Well, the good news is that it's finally going to open up, so I can drop it down to second gear. And have crazy supercharger noises, although now I'm completely boxed in traffic. Oh dear. So when people ask me as well, why did I buy this car left-hand drive, you also start to get a little bit more of the reason behind that, considering what I've done with it so far. The trip in Croatia with Supercar Owners Circle, taking it to Germany, to the Nürburgring area around Car Freitag weekend, and now off to the United States. And of course, all of those countries are left-hand drive countries, which was what I knew because it's how I use a lot of the big cars in the collection. As we go past the Skoda, which is currently being driven by Brad. Ultimate wagon for this kind of thing, given that for two people plus some luggage it would be a bit of a squeeze inside here right now. We did think about doing it, but in reality that wasn't going to work. Just for me, left-hand drive makes more sense. Okay, yes, if you need to get into a parking garage or something, the ticket machine is on the wrong side here in the UK, but how often do I do that? This is not a daily driver car. This is not the car that I take to the shops or something like that. Well, in theory, maybe once or twice, but not like on a regular basis. Whereas when you're in other countries, it obviously helps with your sight lines, being able to see more around the corner, having less of a horrible blind spot. Although I am a little bit anxious for driving this up and down some of the highways in LA. That's going to be moderately terrifying from my experience at that place and how people drive. But today, it's about building into it. You know, I know people want to see this car being absolutely booted around, but you have to remember, it's 1,200 horsepower, and here in the UK, they are incredibly on it with speeding, with fines, with incriminating yourself on a video. It's just not cool. It's better to take it somewhere like I have done, to the runway in Croatia, to go and absolutely floor it down the runway, to go out to places where you can drive it and do things that are fun without landing yourself in trouble, like even some places in America that it's going to go as well. But I want to drive on some nice twisty roads and enjoy it. It's about the experience, you know, it's about having fun at the wheel of the car, and it's about the craziness of it. And you feel it, like every single car that goes past me does something weird, because you know that their eyes are glued to it, absolutely glued to what on earth is this thing, which certainly makes it a little bit challenging. Sitting in traffic, there's some bizarre things going on. People go past and then they slow down and then they go in the other lane, and oh well, we're making our way around, and it's drying up, which is also very welcome because it was forecast to be completely miserable all day today for the last leg of this. Although I say that, I've still got to get rid of some fuel. There's too much in here. That's potentially going to be a problem. That's actually going to be a problem. I'm going to get to the airport and still have a load that needs to go. I actually figure that we're only around 15 miles away, and we've got about a third of a tank, and it needs to be down beneath a quarter. So I guess race mode it's going to be. Down some gears, even though it's, oh, that's sounding cool. Oh. Gosh, when the supercharger kicks in, and conscious that it's a bit wet and slippy, give Brad some fireballs to enjoy. This is actually quite exciting. We're taking the exit to Heathrow Terminal 4 and cargo. I don't think I've ever taken the cargo exit here. This is not your normal cargo, that's for sure. We are taking a Zenvo to a cargo warehouse where normally you have your pallets, your crates, your containers. Obviously you can put a car like this in a container and sail it, but given the timescales involved with flying it is also not that things are very likely to go wrong either way. Flying it is a touch safer because it all happens a little bit quicker, and it's obviously not in a metal box out at sea for a month or so. Instead, it is literally kept in the warehouse while all the documents are being processed and everything like that. And you have to submit the registration document, the passport, everything else. And then when it comes out the other end, it has to clear customs, obviously, in the United States. Now, the US has a brilliant system to do this, to take a car. It's really, really easy, and quite a few people have asked me how to do it after doing it with the previous cars. But you can literally take your car with you for a visit, which is, like, just the concept is really, really quite unusual and out there. But yeah, we're not very far away now from where we are headed to and getting this car dropped off. This is the last 0.1 miles then, I think. This is where I'm actually coming to. I think quite literally this is where I'm dropping off this car. I need to work out where we go in, who we go and meet, who we find, but loosely speaking, this is one Zenvo here, ready to be transported far and wide. Well, that's as far as the camera can go for today. When we wave this off around the corner in a moment, that will be it until that car is being driven in the US, in California. It will be glowing in the sunshine, and surprisingly, it's actually far cleaner than I ever thought it could be, considering the drive that we've just been doing with it. And thankfully, the guys here are actually going to look after it even more because, of course, carbon fiber wheels and the way we have the carbon shrouds around the brakes in here, which is all to do with the heat and airflow, mean that you can't put traditional straps through. So they have a special wheel kit to be able to lock it down, to tie it down when it's going to be loaded onto the pallet, obviously in a customs bonded warehouse, so you can't go in there with a camera, and then it will go from there onwards, where of course we'll then hop into the Skoda, which has all of our luggage. Team car serving team car duties and purposes in a very nice way. But as always, it's going to be very fun to have this with a UK plate on the roads in America, confusing everyone. It's so abnormal, but with the right documentation, all completely allowed, completely legal, not doing anything silly or funny with this. Just wild to think that this thing can be loaded. Now, one thing I didn't know before about the length, it is just by like a centimetre too long for a normal length pallet, which means it has to be loaded onto a double length pallet, a really, really long one, and it changes the way that it's actually able to travel as a plane takes off overhead. Can't quite see looking up, but yes, this is the last goodbye for now. I guess I better start it, drive it around the corner, and we're saying goodbye for the short term to my Zenvo until the next stop is in LA. Well, jump ahead. The car is strapped down. Fortunately, I'm not allowed to share that with you, and we are now in the Skoda Octavia VRS to head round to the terminal to make our way onwards in a Terminal 3 today for a flight, well, a European flight, before soon heading obviously to America and then maybe back here down the line to pick up a Zenvo again. Kind of funny to think it's inside the warehouse. You'll just have to imagine it strapped to a pallet, but ready to rock and roll and onwards to America. Arriving at London Heathrow, we've got the Emirates A380, and then you have a bit of a tunnel, which in the Zenvo could be very noisy. In the Skoda, it's probably not going to be quite so noisy, but certainly very, very comfortable as we now have the final stretch in. We'll park this up as we catch a flight off, and then, yeah, go from there. Parked up then in the short stay car park for the time being. We're actually only on a quick hop for something and then straight back for just a few days before it's going to be time to make the journey over to the US. And like I said, big, big things ahead. The first couple of weeks will all be out in California, Los Angeles, Monterey, back to LA, and then back home after that. But sadly, we are soon going to be saying farewell to the Skoda Octavia VRS. This car has done us incredibly well. Obviously used it for so many different videos you've seen. When we've gone to somewhere and we needed to take a car, it's generally been this. It's been our way of getting around when we've got stuff that needs to go somewhere, a couple of us on the road together. It's been a very, very useful car. We've had it as a long-term drive team car from Skoda here in the UK and been really impressed. Just everything when it comes to something like this, all the tech inside it, the fuel economy, obviously relevant as well. It's the diesel with this. And yeah, it's a big thanks to them. Today though, the Zenvo's on its way. Thanks to My Car Import and everyone who's been involved in the last minute kind of pulling together of all of this to make it happen, just like we've done with some of the cars in the past. I can't wait to get to LA, meet with many of you guys and to take the car to so many different events. It's going to be epic. That's it for this time though. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.